So our final presenters today are Samira Khan and Mustafa Kariba, who are from the British Heart Foundation Data Science Centre. So I will pass over to Samira.
I'll start by sharing my screen and the correct settings. So hopefully everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Oh, it's in. We can see the presenter view at the moment.
Let's change that to the correct one. There we go. Is that better?
Brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Samira Khan and I am PPI manager for the British Heart Foundation Data Science Centre. And I've also got with me today Mustafa Kariba, who's a public partner for the centre as well, and we'll be talking to him a bit later. So I wanted to start off just to give you a very quick overview of what we do at the centre and what we're all about. So it is a partnership between Health Data Research UK and the British Heart Foundation, and we were first established in January 2020. And our kind of ultimate vision is what it says here, so to improve the cardiovascular health of the nation using the power of large-scale data and advanced analytics across the UK. So what we try and do is make it easier for researchers across the UK to collaborate and securely access the latest, most relevant health data with an aim to kind of speed up research and help to answer vital questions about health and circulatory disease. So you can just see a snapshot here of the sort of work that we work on and the types of data that we work on. And I don't have time to go into detail, but one thing I just wanted to kind of highlight is that public involvement and engagement sits right in the centre of everything that we do, and it's something that's weaved in throughout all our thematic areas and all the types of data that we work with. So I was asked today just to kind of provide an example of what PPI might look like in a health data research project. And some of the challenges and opportunities that we might have come across. So we've heard about the principles and the standards, so just a little bit about how you might put those into practice. So I wanted to draw on the Coalesce project, which I'm currently working on. So this project, we're trying to identify individuals who are suboptimally protected from vaccinations. So these are individuals who have not received any dose of their scheduled doses for vaccination. And it's a really interesting project, and we're looking at data across 4 different nations. So we're looking at Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland. And I think one of the first challenges you come across when you're thinking about PPI in data research project is who's best placed to provide advice on your actual research project. So I'll just explain to you what we did for this specific project. So obviously it's a 4-nation study and we're looking at data across the 4 nations. So we had to make sure that the people that we were involving were able to represent those nations. So we identified people from Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England. And how we did that, we linked into existing PPIE networks. We looked at groups that were kind of already established, that had been involved in projects before, and also looked at projects perhaps in health data research that were coming towards an end as well, that might have had co-applicants and people that had experienced in COVID vaccinations as well. So obviously they had to be interested in COVID vaccinations because that's the data that we were looking at. In terms of diversity, we've heard quite a lot about diversity and the importance around it and making sure that we do involve people from different backgrounds and cultures, and that was really important for us. But for this specific project, and I think with health data intense projects, you also need to think about cognitive diversity, because let's face it, there's so much to kind of cover and it's quite intense. So often you do have to involve people that perhaps would be sort of comfortable with confusion, because I've been in meetings where I'm thinking, oh my God, what is all this about? And you'll go away and kind of have a look at things and stuff. So I think to provide meaningful input, it's really important to think about that as well, and to ensure that people have had perhaps some experience of being involved. And perhaps particularly for this study, because the duration of the study was quite short, so it's only over 12 months, we didn't have a huge amount of time. So that was another thing that we had to take into consideration. We also recruited a wider PPIE group, so we recruited 4 members to kind of represent the 4 nations, but also a wider PPIE group across the 4 nations of 10 people, because we felt for one person to represent a whole nation was like a huge burden. So it was really important that, you know, they had this kind of support network and these people that they could go back to and talk about particular things and challenges and issues and this sort of thing. And that's worked really well. And we meet with them quarterly and have discussions and keep kind of in touch throughout the duration of the project. So once you know who's kind of best placed to provide advice on the project and you know who to involve and you've identified those people, then obviously you're going to start thinking about your research cycle. And we are encouraged to kind of think about the whole research cycle and how PPI fits within each of these areas. But I think one thing to note, and from my learning, that it's really important to note that public involvement will not always be relevant at every stage of the research cycle when it comes to PPI and data research. And we've heard quite a lot about, making sure that the work that we're doing is not tokenistic and it's meaningful. So it's really important to think about which areas would actually benefit from PPIE and where would there be an impact. But at the same time, there's an opportunity there to kind of learn in those areas that perhaps we've not done a lot of PPIE in. So I'll just give you an example from the Coalesce project of how people have contributed. So they've helped us to ensure the project stays patient focused. So we took a real kind of deliberative approach. We just had like an open discussion about the challenges, the project, the data sets that we're using, how we're using them, how the data will be collated and all this kind of thing. And it was just a real opportunity for people to ask the questions, any concerns they had. And it just kind of provided that sort of platform for an honest discussion, which worked really, really well in terms of transparency and trying to build that trust. But they've really helped us to stay sort of patient focused with the actual research and brought it back to actually what's the public perspective, what should be prioritized from a public perspective. We've also invited them, the public partners, so the 4 public partners, to be part of the monthly steering group meetings. So they're now, as part of those steering group meetings, on the email correspondence, and we have a standing agenda item where we discuss PPIE. Now, as I said, PPIE won't be relevant at every stage, but it's that fairness of opportunity. So it allows people to have those discussions about, perhaps things that they don't understand. And it allows people to be involved throughout the duration of the study. So if there's anything that they're not sure about, they have the opportunity to ask the questions if they want to. And that's how we're going to learn about PPIE and data intense projects. And that's worked really, really well so far. They've helped us prioritize objectives and methods from a public perspective. So as I said earlier, we didn't have a huge amount of time. We only had like 12 months, and it's quite a big study within 12 months. So they've really helped us in terms of what sort of things we should be focusing on and what's sort of the methods we should be looking at in terms of a public perspective. But the other thing just to mention here is that we invited the principal investigator, the PI, on the project to actually come and talk to the wider PPIE group. And this kind of links with what Mari was talking about the institute buy-in and how important that is. And it really kind of, the feedback that I got from the public members was, how it made them feel valued and how they were able to kind of discuss the project openly and ask those questions that they were concerned about. They really helped with sort of data prioritization as well, and we were open to sort of various different questions. And I was really surprised by how much knowledge they actually had. When things are clarified and when things make sense, you're able to kind of fill those knowledge gaps and people can contribute more in a meaningful way. And it's that kind of two-way process, which has already been mentioned, that's so important, and that's worked really, really well for us. We're also at the stage now to where we're reviewing the analysis plan for the research. So not everyone has seen an analysis plan, but it's important for us to ensure that the public are sort of able to review it and able to contribute and provide their feedback. So one of the public members from the steering group suggested that the data health scientists actually came to the wider PPIE group and actually talked us through the data analysis plan. So what kind of things go into this in terms of the data interrogation and analysing the data, etc. And that's something that we've set up, and now sort of we'll do that with the wider group, which should be good. But in terms of the feedback that we've had so far from the public, they've focused on sort of the covariate selection, so things around like the patient characteristics, so things like ethnicity, age, gender. They've contributed to what sort of things should be prioritized, which has been really, really interesting. So it can, again, it's that kind of fairness of opportunity, allowing people to contribute if they wish to, and providing the opportunity to do so. They will also help us with contributing to synthesizing results and conclusions. We're not at this stage yet, but hopefully they'll be helping us in terms of what we should be focusing on and what are the key messages as well in terms of the conclusion from the study. And then they'll support us with the dissemination of the results. So we've already had discussions about a public engagement plan and how we can reach out to different communities as well. And sort of, some of the public partners have gave us some really good suggestions about how face-to-face interactions are more penetrating, and perhaps use certain things work in Northern Ireland and certain things work in Wales. So we're kind of taking a responsive approach to it all and kind of adapting our approach accordingly, I think, when it comes to dissemination. And they're also going to help us with co-production of public-facing materials. So we've already started having discussions about what that might look like. So we've had discussions about things like sound bites, things like podcasts, infographics when it comes to co-production on creating things, but also thinking about cultural awareness and making sure that the work that we do and whatever we create is culturally appropriate for the nations that we're focusing on as well. So that was also key. And then evaluation and impact, which I've highlighted and has already been mentioned, and the importance of this. I think this is how we're going to learn, and it's so important that we continue to evaluate the work that we're doing and look at the impact and look where the gaps are and see how we can work with that and really build that cycle of an evidence base that Maury was mentioning. And I think that's so important, and that's how everybody's going to learn. So hopefully that's just given you a very brief snapshot of what PPIE might look like in practice in a health data science project. I'm conscious it is a very kind of short snapshot, but you can learn more about the Coalesce project, and I'll send around the links and things like that. But I'm sure there'll be people thinking about the public perspective and what it means for the public to be involved. So I'll just stop sharing my screen so you can see myself and Mustafa. And so we've got Mustafa Kariba here from the BHF Data Science Centre, and he's a public partner. And I would just like to ask Mustafa some questions to kind of explore his experiences and kind of get that perspective from a public perspective, if that's okay, Mustafa.
Yeah, doing sound chest. Can you all hear me okay? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not an employee of any of the organization mentioned. I am a member of the public. I was going to say I'm a mere mortal in the midst of this august body of scientists and researchers. It's somewhat daunting to be with you guys. Anyway, my journey started in 2015, I guess. I was being investigated for a blocked artery. And in fact, I didn't have blocked artery. They struggled to find out what was wrong. And I was bombarded with leaflets. One of them was a little tiny one of the British Health Foundation. And I decided to look them up on the internet. And I was absolutely blown away by the quality of the information on BHF. If you've not been on their website, have a look. It's generally written with the patient and the public in mind. It's written in conversational English. And I subscribed to their magazine and got involved in few things with them. Absolutely captivating. So fast forward to last year. Last year, I was asked whether I wanted to join this incredible project called Imaging Data. And in one word is, how do we exploit the imaging produced by scanners and the amount of data to improve, the health of the people, especially in cardiology. I mean, it uses modern technology, artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, and there's like 60 scientists involved into it. They really got excited. But part of me was a little bit concerned. I was a little bit concerned that it might be a tick exercise from a public perspective. I should have explained I'm also an NHS governor. I've been an NHS governor for 6 years. And I'm involved in a number of organizations where there is public engagement. In fact, in one of them, where I'm a non-executive director, I'm going to resign, and I'll tell you why. Because it's merely a tick box, and I think it's been mentioned here. So when it's a merely tick box, it's it's not very exciting for people to get involved in. So I joined with that skepticism of a little bit concerned. Is this going to be a tick box? We had a 2-day webinar, close to 100 people on it. 2 days, riveted to your seat. I have a very low boredom threshold. I got bored, and I was captivated for the duration. Why? Because they were not just interested in us being sort of passive participants. We were genuinely active participants. We got involved in a number of breakout sessions. Our views were not only heard, but actions were taken on our views, which really impressed me. So and that was like over a year ago. So that's how I got involved there. Very fascinating.
Thank you, Mustafa. And just very quickly, from your experience, what do you think are the challenges and opportunities of PPIE in health data science?
Yeah, it's actually a very good question, Samara. I often think of challenges and opportunities to improve, like the two sides of the same coin, if you know what I mean. For every challenge, there is an opportunity to do well. And if I'm going to pick one, I think during the workshop, that one of the biggest concerns from the public is around data. It's about information. Who's going to own the information of the patient? You know, I mean, some people say in the UK, NHS is almost like a religion, and it's jealously guarded. So people are concerned that the data will fall into the hand of commercial organizations. Of course, we have a number of suppliers involved in. We're not against it, but we want just to protect it. So data security, integrity, quality, etc., were the biggest concern. And for us, the biggest opportunity here is data transparency. If we are genuinely in any project transparent about data, guess what happens? We're relaxed. The quality improves because it's open. So everybody gets a chance to look at the data. Patient data is riddled with errors. You know, you collect data from different sources paper. So get the chance for the patient to get involved in that. You get greater support as well. And when there is good quality data married with the brain power of the 60 scientists, the quality of the algorithm will be better. Ultimately, to be quite honest, at the end of the day, it's all about making a difference to people's lives, isn't it? The thing that holds us together. Are we going to make a difference to? And that's the greatest gift to mankind. So that's the main reason what drives people, members of the public, to get involved in. I hope that answers your question, Samaya.
It really does. Thank you so much, Mustafa, for sharing. And just to say, Mustafa is absolutely amazing, and I learn so much from him every day. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks everybody for listening. I'll hand back over to Kate.
Thank you both. That's really, really good way to end our session. I realise we're running very, very close to time at this precise moment, and we always knew it's going to be a challenge squeezing so much stuff and so many kind of important discussions and concepts into this hour.